One of the most common suggestions that I generally give to someone who is learning SQL or who wants to get better at writing SQL queries is to solve a problem in multiple different ways. Now, by doing that, you will be able to apply different concepts of SQL in solving the problem. Additionally, it will help you during your interviews where you might have to not use a particular concept to solve a problem, or you might have to give multiple solutions to the same problem. And that is why in this video, I'm going to be solving an SQL interview problem, but I'm not going to just give you one solution, but I'm going to give you 6 different solutions to the same problem. And mind you, the most easiest of the solution is going to be the last one. Let's start. Okay, so let's start with the problem statement. You can see that I have been given an input table. I need to write a query which is going to derive the output, which looks something like this. So the problem statement states, the status column in input table depicts the status of a child. If the parent has at least one child in active status, then we need to report the whole parent as active. If none of the child is active for a parent, then we report the parent as inactive. Okay, it's a simple problem. Let's try to understand this. So in the input table, we have 3 fields. There is parent ID, child ID, and status. This status is the status of each child. Okay, you can have parents who are having multiple children and they can have different statuses, right? So for example, in parent 1, you can see that parent 1 has 4 child, 2 of them are active and 2 of them are inactive. Since at least one of the child is active for parent 1, we make the whole parent as active. When it comes to parent 2, you can see that it has 2 childs, one is active, one is inactive. Since one of them is active, we make the parent 2 as active. When it comes to parent 3, it has only one child and it is inactive. Hence, the parent 3 will be inactive. When it comes to parent 4, again, one is active, one is inactive. Hence, the whole parent 4 will become active. And finally, when it comes to parent 5, you can see that both the childs are inactive. Since there are no active childs for parent 5, we will make parent 5 as inactive. Okay. So this is basically what we need to solve using SQL. Okay. Now, I'm going to be using PostgreSQL database and pgadmin tool to solve this problem. Of course, you can use any database of your choice. Okay. All the material, scripts, everything will be present in my blog. I will leave the link to my blog in the video description. Now let's start with solution number 1. Now I have already created this input table in my database. Okay. And for solution number 1, let's think, how do you solve this? If I go back to my problem statement, you can see that I have multiple records for different parents, right? But in my output, you can see that I just need one record for each parent, right? And my first criteria is I need to find the active parents. So that means if there are any record for a parent with the status active, I straight away take that and put it in my output, right? So I'll use that concept. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let me move this down, and here I'll just copy this whole line. And I'll put this here, and I'm just going to put a filter condition saying that where status equal to active. Okay, and let's see if, okay, all this active is in the same case, right? So I'll just put this condition, and if I just execute this, you can see that I am getting the 3 parents. So 1, 2, and 4. These are the only 3 parents who are having child with active status. But I need just one record for each parent. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a group by. So I'll say group by. So group by parent ID comma status. Okay. And I'll just copy the same thing here. And if I run this, now you can see that I have already got half of my output. Okay, so 1, 2, and 4 are active. If I go back to my output, expected output, you can see that 1, 2, and 4 are active. So I have already got 3 out of the 5 records that I wanted in my expected output. Okay, now the next thing that I need to find are the inactive parents. Okay, so this query here gives me all the active parents. Now how do I find the inactive parents? What I can do is, if I just query from this table and exclude all the parents that are coming from this query, then that should give me my inactive parents, right? In order to do that, I'm just going to use a CTE here. I'm just going to say with, let's say this is my active parents. I'll just name the CTE as active, and I'll just move this to the right, and I'll put this whole thing inside the parenthesis. I'll put a comma. I'll start my next CTE, and I'll call this like inactive. Okay, I'll say as, and here I'm just going to write a query to fetch, let's say, from this main table, that is parent child status. Okay, and I'll just call it like A, where a dot parent ID is not in. So I'm trying to fetch all the inactive parents, right? So I'm going to fetch all the inactive parents. In fact, I'll just put these two columns here, parent ID and status. I'm going to fetch all the parents from this table, that is input table, where the parent ID is not present in this subquery, right? In this above query, because these are the parents who are active. So I do not want to include these active parents so that I can get all the inactive parents. So where do I get this from? This is my active table. So here I'll just tell select parent ID from active. Okay, so I'll just move this. So this should give me all the active parents, and I'm putting a not in here. So it will exclude all the active parents, and hopefully I'll get all the inactive parents here, right? So, and then let's say, just for the sake of verifying this, I'm just going to say select star from, I'll say inactive. Okay. And if I just run this, let's see what happens. Now, if I run this, I'm just fetching all the inactive parents. As you can see here, you'll see that I'm getting 3 and 5. Okay. So 3, okay, 5 is repeated twice because I think 5 has 2 childs who are inactive. Okay. But I'm getting 3 and 5. If I go to my expected output, you can see that 3 is inactive and 5 is inactive, right? So I think this works. So now what I'm going to do is, so this subquery here, or this CT here, gives me all the inactive parents. This gives me all the active parents. If I have to include all of them together in my query, I can just use the union clause, right? So what I'll do is I'll say union select, and I'll just move this here, select star from active. Okay. And let's say I'll do an order by parent ID. Okay. And if I just run this whole query, now you can see that I am getting 5 records, 1 record for each parent. I'm getting 1 and 2 are active, 3 is inactive, 4 is active, and 5 is inactive. Okay. So this is basically my solution number 1 to this problem. Okay. I hope you guys have understood this. Now let's move on to the solution number 2. Now in solution number 1, the problem here is, it's not a problem, but if you see, we have 2 different subqueries, then we have a union clause, etc. Right? We can simplify this, and let's try to simplify that in our solution number 2. Okay, so I'm just going to go into our solution number 2 here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, if I just query my main table, and I'll just put it here. If I run this, you can see that I have multiple records for parent and multiple records because they have multiple childs with their status, right? Now let's say if I just do something like I'll do an order by, and I'll just move this here. I'll say parent ID comma status. Okay, and if I run this, now if I run this, if you look carefully, you can see for parent 1, the first record here is of active. For parent 2, the first record is again of active. Parent 3 does not have any active. Parent 4, again the first record is active. Parent 5 does not have any active. Okay. Now, if I could partition these records based on the parent, and I only fetch the first record within each of the partition, then whichever parent has active child, I would get that active with as the first record in the partition, and whoever does not have the active child, their first record would be inactive, right? Now, how do I fetch the first record from each partition? I could use a window function, let's say row number, right? And that is exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to say select star comma row number, okay, over, and I'm just going to say partition by parent ID and order by, I'll just say status. I don't need to again order by parent ID because I'm already partitioning each parent, right? So each parent ID records will be separate, and within that the sorting will happen based on the status. So active will be at the top and inactive will be after that, right? So if I just, let's say, give a name for this, let's say RN, okay, and maybe, yeah, it is, I have given it here, maybe you cannot see it, but let me execute this. Okay, if I execute this, and okay, you can see it here, right? So you see here I have the parent 1, then the first record here I have the row number, that is 1 2 3 4. For parent 2, you can see that I have the row number 1 and 2. For parent 3, inactive is row number 1. For parent 4, you can see that the row number is 1 and 2. And then for parent 5, you can see that I have the row number 1 and 2. Okay. So for each parent ID, I have different row numbers generated. Now from this whole query, if I just fetch the record where the row number is 1, I should get one record for each parent. And if the parent has active, I will get that record. And if the parent only has inactive child, then I'll get only that inactive record. Okay. Now, how do I fetch only records where the row number is 1? I can just put this whole thing into a CTE. So I can just tell with CTE as, and I'll just move this to the right. And always remember, if you're using a CTE, you don't need to order the records. Okay. Especially you don't need to order the records when you have your window function, because this will sort the data by itself. And then here I can just tell select star from CTE where rn equal to 1. Okay. And maybe I don't need to fetch star. I'll just tell parent id comma status. Okay. And if I just run this, now you can see that I am getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parents. And for each parent, whatever their status that I wanted in my expected output, I'm just getting it here. I hope this solution is clear. Okay. So I just used row number so that I could partition the data based on each parent. And sorted the data based on the status. So active will be at the top. If active is not present, then only inactive will be at the top. So I just had to fetch the record from the top, or the first record from the partition. And that is exactly what I did. Okay. And I got my solution. Okay. Now my solution 3 is almost similar to this solution. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my solution 3 here. Okay. And I'll just move this to down, and I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Okay. I'll just tell you, very simple. The solution 2 and solution 3 are almost similar. What I'll do is, instead of using a CTE here, I'll just copy this whole query. Okay. And I'll just put this here, and I'll just create a subquery. Okay, I'm not using a CT, but I'm using a subquery. So I'll just tell select parent ID and status from this whole subquery. Okay, I'll give an alias for the subquery, let's say X, and here I'll just tell where X.rn equal to 1. Okay, that's it. And if I run this, you can see that again I'm getting the same output. Okay, so my solution 2 and solution 3 are very similar, very identical. Only difference is, in solution 2 I am using a CT, in solution 3 I'm just using a normal subquery. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to our solution number 4. Now, as part of my solution 4, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use joins, and probably I'll use a case statement. Okay, and you'll see why. So let me just move this down, and let me just query this table, and I'll just put this here. Okay, so this is my data. Now, what I'm going to do is I will first fetch all the parents, okay, from this table. So what I'm going to do is I'll just tell fetch all the parents, because there are multiple records for a parent. I want only one record for each parent. So I'll do a distinct. So distinct of each parent. So I have got all the 5 parents. Okay. So this is one of my queries. Then I'll write another query. And here what I'll do is I will fetch the parent and the status for active parents only. Okay. So I'll say where status equal to active. Okay. And if I just run this, now you can see that I have 3 parents who are active. Okay. Then what I'll do is I'll join this whole thing with this query. Okay. So I'll join these 2 queries. Okay. I'll tell you why. Because in the first query, I'm getting all the parents. In the second query, I'm getting only active parents. Then I can probably do an outer join, and using the outer join, and then I can use a case statement to find who are the active and inactive parents. Okay. So I'll just show you how to do that. So I'll say select from, this is going to be my first query. Okay. I'll just put the whole thing into a subquery. Okay. And I'm going to call it like, let's say query A. And here I'll say left join. Why am I doing left join? Because I want this to be my main table or main query. Okay. Because this is the query which is fetching all the 5 parents, right? So I'll do a left join. Okay. And then this whole thing, I will put this into the second query, and I'll just move this to the right. Okay, so this whole subquery, or in this case now it becomes a subquery. I'll put it as my second table here. I'll call it like B, and my join condition is going to be the parent ID, right? I'll just tell B dot parent ID equal to A dot parent ID. Okay, and maybe I'll just move this here. So what I basically did in my first query, I found all the 5 unique parents. In the second query, I found all the 3 unique active parents. I joined them using the parent ID, but I did a left join. Okay, why did it do a left join? So let's say I'll do a star here, and if I run this, you can see that I'm getting all the 5 parents. Okay, but if I did not do a left join, and if I just did a normal inner join, then I have lost the 2 inactive parents. Why? Because I'm matching only the basically I'm fetching only the matching records. So in this second query, I'm only getting 3 parents, right? And that is why I'm using a left join. Okay. Now, once I have got the left join, so I'll just make sure that I fetch only the fields that I need. So I'll say a dot parent ID comma a dot, let's say, status. Okay. And if I just run this, or not a dot status, because my a table I do not have the status, but let's say b dot status. Okay, if I run this, now you can see that, and let's say I'll just sort the data so that you can see it in proper order. I'll say order by a dot parent ID. Okay, and if I just run this, now you can see that I have got all the 5 parents, and with regards to the status, I have got the status of all the active parents. Okay, but for all the inactive parents, it's basically showing the status as null because I have not applied any logic to fetch the inactive parents. Okay, but just by using this data, I can identify that 3 does not have any child who is active, and 5 does not have any child that is active, right? In this case, what I can do is I can just put a case statement here saying that case when b dot status is null. If it is null, then I know that this belongs to inactive. These are the inactive parents, right? So then I can just hard code this here like inactive, and else I will want to fetch the actual status. Okay, so b dot status and this whole thing I'm just going to call it like, let's say, status. Okay, and I'm just going to move this to the next line here, and I'll say else, and I think that's fine. Okay, so now if I just run this, now you can see that 1, 2 are active, 3 is inactive, 4 is active, and 5 is inactive. This is exactly the output that I wanted. Okay, so this is another way of solving the same problem. I just use a left join and I use the case statement. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to the solution number 5. So as part of solution number 5, so first of all, let me just move this here. Now, as part of solution number 5, what I'm going to do is I will just use, let's say, probably the union clause. Okay, so I'll just copy this whole table here and I'll come here. And if I just query this input table, I have this data, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'll use a union clause to solve this problem. So first of all, I'll just fetch, let's say, parent ID comma status. Okay, where the status is equal to active. Okay, and if I just fetch this, I'm getting 4 records ideally because the parent one has 2 active child. So I'll just use a distinct clause here. And then, so this is my query to fetch the active parents. And then if I want to fetch the inactive parents, I can put a status here like inactive. Okay, and if I just run this, I'm getting 1, 2, and 5. But if I go into my output, you see here 3 is also inactive. Okay, but the problem is, you see the inactive here, the case is different. Here the A is in lowercase, here the A is in uppercase, right? In order to handle the different case, we will put a function here saying that, let's say, lower of status equal to inactive, and I'll just put everything in lowercase. Okay, now if I run this, now you can see that I am getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, all the parents are having at least one inactive child. Okay, so I'm getting all the 5, but I know as per the logic that I need to apply, only 3 and 5 needs to have the inactive record, right? So because 1, 2, and 4 are having active childs as well. So to eliminate those active parents, I'm just going to put another condition here saying that not exist. And here I'll just tell select one from the same table, and I'm just going to call this like, let's say B, this is going to be A. And here I'll just tell where B dot status equal to active and B dot parent ID equal to A dot parent ID. Okay. And so what am I basically doing? I'm fetching all the inactive parents, but I'm excluding any parents who are also active. Okay. Let me fix this name. And now if I run this, hopefully I should only get 2 parents. Okay. That is 3 and 5. So this query here gives me all the inactive parents. This query here gives me all the active parents. And I can just merge them together using the union clause. Okay. And if I run this whole thing here, and let's say I will just order by, so I'll say order by parent ID. Okay. And if I run this, now you can see that I am getting the 5 records. Okay. And since I'm using the union clause here, union by default will only fetch unique records. I don't need to do a distinct here. So I will remove the distinct from both of these queries. Okay. And then I'll run this whole query. And you can see that I am getting my final output. Okay. So this is my solution number 5, where I'm mainly using the union clause. Okay. Now, I have given you 5 different solutions to this particular problem. And I told you in the beginning of the video that the best solution is going to be the last solution, right? Now, let's go into our best solution. Now, why am I going to call this like the best solution? It's because it's the most simplest of the solution for this particular problem. Okay. So let's look at solving this problem using, in my opinion, one of the most easiest solution. So this is our solution number 6. Okay. So first of all, I'll just query the data, select star from this table. Now you can see that I have multiple records for different parents, right? But if I could group the data based on each parent ID, and I'm not bothered about the child, and let's say for the status, I know the status can either be active or inactive. If I could just use an aggregate function, let's say min aggregate function, because if I put max, then I is greater than A because inactive and A active, I will be higher. So I will always, because all the parents are having inactive. So for example, what I'm trying to explain is, let's say if I do a group by parent ID, and here I'll say I'll fetch the parent ID, and I'll say I'll fetch the max of status. Okay. And let's say as status, and if I just run this, you can see that I'm getting 5 parents, but all the 5 are having inactive childs, right? But I don't want that. But instead of max, if I use min, and if I just run this, you can see that, and let's say if I do an order by parent ID, if I just run this, you can see that I'm actually getting the 5 parents, and I'm actually getting the output exactly how I want it. So the first 2 parents are active, the third one is inactive, fourth is active, and fifth is inactive. And this is actually my solution to the problem. Okay. So you have seen 6 different solutions, and I think you would agree that this, in this particular case, is the most simplest of the solution and the most straightforward solution. I hope you like this video. If you have any other solution to the same problem, let me know in the comments below. If you learned something new from this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give me a like on this video, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon in the next one. Bye.